Hey kids, welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 8, Mutator Methods, exercise number 5. The customer class represents a customer of Project Mercury's pasty food truck. It has an instance variable called customer dessert for the customer's dessert. We're going to write the method enter orders to use the scanner input to enter the quantities of dessert. Then after that, we're going to add some fanciness or spice to our dessert, kids. If the total quantity of desserts requested is greater than or equal to 24, we're going to give them a 25% discount. Not only are we going to calculate the total quantity requested, we're also going to print off the price. If we get stuck, we got some pseudocode. And then under main, we're going to instantiate a scanner object to use it to test our enter orders method. And we should get a print off that looks like this. That doesn't sound too bad. Let's take care of our first thing and import our dessert class that we've been working on. And let's take care of writing the enter orders method. So let's go over to our customer.java. Let's take a look at the code while we find where we have to write. We're importing our scanner class. We are making a new class customer. It has one private instance variable, and the variable is type dessert, and the variable name is customer dessert. So it looks like it points to the dessert object we created in exercise 4. If you look at this graphic, you can see customer dessert can call either the myDessert accessor get method for flavor and price, or it can mutate or set the flavor and price of the myDessert object. Then we have a no argument constructor and a parameterized constructor. Down here, it looks like we have the code for lesson 5a. That'll be handled in a separate video. And then it looks like the code we're going to do today. And they already gave us our method signature here, public access, void type. Our method name is enter orders, and it's a scanner input. And we are going to write our code down here. Now, I'm going to do this a little out of order. If we are creating a scanner class, we should instantiate that scanner object immediately. I'm going to go over to my console, and I'm going to come down here and instantiate my object. They already gave me space. We saw this in an earlier lesson. I'm going to create my scanner input. Input is a variable name. It's going to be a new scanner. With an input for a keyboard. That creates my scanner object, and that's going to let me take information and kind of test as we go along. Let's go back to our customer class and find where we need to write. And what do we really have to do? Well, we're writing a method, enter orders, that gets the quantity of desserts. So let's start there. Let's get the quantity of desserts. If I'm getting a quantity, well, the first thing I'm going to need is a variable to store that, right? So I'm going to go int quantity. Make sure I spell this right, though. I'm sure I'm going to spell this wrong a million times, so we got to be careful. That's going to store whatever the user inputs. How are we going to get that user input, though? This is where we need to print off a statement to ask the user to input something and then store that number. And that's not hard. And if you look down here, it looks like our exit is going to be -1. That gives me a hint that this should keep working as long as there's a positive number. And you can see they type -1 to exit out. So I want this program while our quantity is greater than or equal to 0 to keep running. and that'll be inside here. And while we're in here, we want to go system.out.print, and we'll ask, just like they have in there, how many desserts, and then they got a couple more parentheses, or -1 to quit. And then we look like we have our colon and a space. Well, that prints it out. We got to store that information though, right, kids? And where do we want to store it? Well, in our variable quantity. And that's going to be equal to the scanner input. So we created that scanner object called input. And remember this method, next int, that'll just get a number that the user inputs and to check to make sure it's an integer. So we're just going to do next int. And then don't forget your parentheses and a semicolon. Now I have to call that method I just wrote. We just created the scanner object. Now our customer object, myCustomer, is going to run that method, enter orders. And what do we want to pass along here? Well, we created that variable input, and that's what's going to be passed along. So that's what we want to get. So whatever the user inputs will be passed along in our class here. Remember, we took the parameter input, and that's what we're storing from the user. Let's see if this is right. Let's hit run. Oh, forgot a semicolon. Let's go over here. Make sure we got our semicolon. Well, let's run it again. Oh, we're getting an error here. Cannot find this. If we look over here in our class, kids, I forgot to do one important thing. Remember this little line of code? Yeah, we forgot to close our scanner class, and our scanner class won't work without that. So this is a very important piece. So we're going to write input close. And we want that outside the while statement, but in the larger method. Let's go back. Let's hit run. This should work this time. Kids, classic Rhodes mistake. Enter orders, enter order. We forgot our S. Well, let's run it. Third time's a charm. We're getting our above printing off. Now we're getting our new one. How many desserts? Let's type in 2 and hit -1. Nothing happened. Well, we need to give it a print statement to tell that, right, kids? Where's that print statement going to go? It's going to go right here, and let's just do system.out.println. And what do we want to print off? Let's print off our variable here, quantity. So we're going to do quantity. Don't forget your semicolon. And it looks like it has some words here. Total. Don't forget to put this in quotes. Total desserts ordered. And we're going to concatenate. Now that should print off for us. Let's tab this over here and give us one space. Go back to our class. Now when we hit run, we should hit 2. Let's hit -1. And you can see here we got -1. If we look up here We can see it's smushing down. We don't need to use this right now. We're going to come to that in 1 minute. Let's keep working. Now we got our method. Let's try one more thing and run it one more time. What if I enter 2, another 2, maybe a 40? I should get 44. Let's hit -1. I got 40. Looks like it's just picking up the last number I enter. And I can fix that pretty easy. I can create a new variable to store whatever quantities entered and keep adding to that. You remember we did this a lot in APCSP. Let's create our variable. I'm going to call it int, and let's call it total quantity. And initially that's going to be set to 0. And we want people to be able to add to it, right? So as long as the quantity is 0, we're going to ask them, how many desserts do you want? And we want to add to it. I think if we asked before the statement, we'll get our initial one and then add to whatever they do, which would be 0. And I'm just going to write total quantity is equal to total quantity plus quantity. That's hard spelling, kids, and that's really cumbersome. And I can clean up this code with a little shortcut. Basically, I just want to take whatever the total is and just keep adding the new variable to it, right? And I can cut out total quantity. And you can see I have this equal plus, but if I reverse it to plus equal, that says the same thing as the other line. This is a neat little shortcut. We're going to use it quite a bit. Again, plus equal is just saying total quantity is equal to previous total quantity plus the new variable. Well, let's try this out now. We are going to go 2 plus 40. Now when I hit -1, I should get 44. I don't. That's because I'm still printing off quantity. I need to print off total quantity. Let's try that again. 2 plus 2 plus 40. -1. Now I get my 44. So now I'm keeping track of what actually the customer's ordering. This really takes care of 1 and a little bit of B. We still got to handle A. What happens if they want to order more than 24? We want to give them a discount. We want loyalty with our customer base. How would we do that? Well, and right outside our while statement, let's write an if statement. And if that total quantity is greater than or equal to 0, we want something to happen. And this something is really the cool piece of code, and probably why you're here watching this video. This goes back to this idea of encapsulation and read-write access. Remember, we wrote those get and set methods for access outside of the class. And we can take those ideas and use them here. And really what I want to do is get whatever the current price is and multiply that by 25%. So the first thing I'm going to do is, what object are we working with? Well, customer dessert. And remember, we have access to those get and set methods. So we want to set the current price for whatever the customer dessert is to the current price times 25%. So we're just going to get the customer, but spell it right, dessert at get price, so whatever the current price is, And we want to multiply that times 0.25, 25%. Again, we have access to the price and flavor methods from dessert. Now, is that going to print off? Let's try. We're going to add 26, and let's see if anything changes from above. I can check my math here. $1.75 times 0.25 is $43.75. Well, that's helpful, but that's really kind of back-end information, right? They're probably more interested in a total price for what it is. So we have a total dessert here. We should have a total price as well. And if you look down here, we have a total dessert and a total cost. And if you're wondering why does mine look a little different, well, it does not look like my lesson 4.1 came in here, and we're not going to worry about that. But that's okay. We can come back and change that a little later if we want. Back to our customer class, let's print off this total cost of desserts. And in order to do that, we're going to go outside this if statement and make a new variable. And this is going to be the total price. And if you saw, our price can be a decimal, so it should be a double. And total price is going to be equal to, well, we're going to get whatever the current price is, because remember, we just set it from above. So the customer dessert get price, and we're just going to multiply that times the total quantity. And this now should be storing whatever the current price is, because again, we modified it right here. We just set it. And then we're going to multiply it towards that total quantity that we stored from above. Once we do that, we can print it out. And they have it here as system.out.println. And they have it as total cost of desserts. And we're going to concatenate. And we're going to call that new variable we just created total price. Don't forget your semicolon. Now, when I hit run, whenever I update my quantity, I should get that print off. And I should get a new price. Let's go ahead and see if this works, kids. Oh, looks like we have an error on double over here. We don't put any quotes there because we're just calling the variable. It's also why we had an error down there. Should have caught that earlier, kids. Let's hit run and see what we got. How many desserts do I want? Well, I want 2. And maybe I'm really hungry, so I want 4 more. Well, I'm really hungry, so let's do 20. That should take me to 24. If I do -1 to exit out, I ordered 26. Wow, I can't even count. 4 plus 2, kids, that's 6. 26 total. Total cost is $11. And, well, I don't think we have 3/8 of a cents. I'm sure in a future lesson we're going to learn how to round up. But for right now, that's the actual cost. It tells me new flavor and the total price. Woo! That was a lot of coding, kids. But as you saw, Using decomposition, we broke this down to much more manageable code. Kids, I'm going to cut in the key takeaways from part A because really part A and part B are the same thing. Key takeaways from this lesson, kids, is really understanding this principle of encapsulation in Java. And the way I always like to think about it is a read-write method. Within the main class we set read-only access. And then through our getter and setter methods, or accessor or mutators, we can write information to those different classes. But yet we don't change the initial class. And that really is the entire idea of encapsulation, which is one of the fundamental principles of Java. And to really understand this lesson, and probably why you're here, is really to understand this graphic. And through this, we can use our get and set methods to actually change an object outside of its class. In this lesson, we created a new customer object called myCustomer, and it had a parameter myDessert, which was another object. MyDessert had two parameters, coconut and $1.75. That really means myCustomer was really myCustomer flavor price. But it was flavor and price for that myDessert object we created earlier. Because we gave these public accessor and public mutator methods, we could change or manipulate that myDessert object. And just remember how we saw those variables or numbers were through accessor methods, and how we changed those were through mutator methods. And kids, if you get this, you're really getting Java. Hopefully this video helped you understand mutator methods a little better. As always, kids, if you have any questions, come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next lesson. See you later, kids. Bye.